welcome back to the Tess Files. My name is Tess and this is my channel where I'm taking you with me as I transform from a physiotherapist to a medical student and hopefully a future doctor. Thank you for everybody who's been watching my channel so far this year, and welcome to anybody who's new. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the year that was, my first year as a medical student in Sydney. And I just want to use this video, I suppose, to have a reflection on the year that was and talk a little bit about my ups and my downs. And also I have a lot of questions from all of you, which has been fabulous. So I want to try and answer as many of them as I can today. There's quite a few questions, so I'll try my best to put them all into one video, and if not, then we might split them into two or something like that. We'll just kind of see how long it takes. And I might also put some timestamps down in the description box, so if there's a particular question that you just want to skip to, then feel free to check out the description box below and we'll go from there. First of all, yay, I finished my first year of med school, which I'm very proud of myself for, to be honest. I had a really interesting year, probably the best year of my life, and I'm not saying that just to be kind of dramatic and self-validating, but it really was one of the best years I've had. I felt so fulfilled the whole year, and it was one of those really rare and wonderful times in life where I just felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be, and it kind of just affirmed kind of everything that I'd been thinking over the previous years, that medical school was the place where I needed to be. So I was really lucky, and I'm so grateful to have had a wonderful year. So I'm going to start with some of my absolute favorite things from the year 2019, and absolutely number one was meeting so many amazing people and making some amazing new friends. I've been just so privileged and lucky in the last 12 months to have met a lot of people that are really similar to me and really challenge me and have supported me, and I feel really #blessed to have met all of them. And that's not just in my medical school life, but also in my home life as well. I have some amazing housemates who have become amazing friends. It's been moving cities and been able to meet so many new people and build up such a great support network. It's absolutely been the highlight of the year. The other really big thing that I'm proud of this year is how I was able to really adapt and change to the challenges that I was experiencing. It was absolutely not an easy year at all, and I had some real tough times where I was really having to look inwards and reflect and to improve and change. And I'm really proud of myself that I was able to rise to the occasion and was able to really improve how I was managing the caseload. That's like physio test talking. The study load that I had. At the start of the year, I didn't talk about it on my channel, but I didn't get marks that I was happy with. My first exam in particular, I was really challenged, and coming back to uni after not studying for such a long time, I really didn't know how to study, and I got marks that I was not happy with. And it was the first time in my life as a kind of an academic, I suppose, that I had experienced that feeling of real disappointment in myself. And I was really sad about that for a while, and then I was able to kind of reflect on my study techniques. I spoke to a lot of people, I got lots of assistance, and I was able to kind of improve my study habits throughout the year, and ended up with a mark at the end of the year that I was really proud of and really happy with. So an absolute triumph for me, I think, this year. So it was really good to be able to learn in that way. The other really big highlight was getting to actually go to med school and to get to learn so many things. I'm so lucky at my university. We have such amazing facilities, and getting to be in some really cool old buildings and getting to learn from, you know, one of the highest ranked anatomy departments in the world, and you know, learning how to use a microscope, and you know, going into the hospital not as a physiotherapist but as a medical student, and actually getting to see how consultants take histories and examine patients, and going to clinics and spending time with some of the most you know, well-respected doctors in the state and in the country, and you know, having them be so gracious with their time and teaching us. And I felt so lucky the whole year to be in the position that I'm in, and I can't kind of state that enough. It's something that I think about often, is I kind of look around uni and I'm like, wow, like I never thought that I would be somewhere like this, learning from people like this. So I feel really privileged every day to be in the position I am, and it hasn't stopped being a highlight. Like I'm definitely not cool enough to to not kind of be like, oh God, this is the best thing ever. It totally is the best thing ever. I suppose those are kind of my major highlights of the year. In terms of challenges, there was quite a few. I mean, med school has some really high highs and also some really low lows. And I suppose that's just life, right? Like we've all got ups and downs. I felt like though, because this year I had given up my whole life and I'd moved halfway across the country, the stakes seemed like a lot higher. And so whenever I experienced challenges, it just felt like a bigger burden to carry. And I suppose that kind of reiterates the fact that it is really important in medical school to have a good support network and people that can kind of help you through those challenging times. One of the biggest challenges I had personally was not doing so well in that previous exam, which I mentioned, and I suppose I kind of turned that challenge into a real positive. But at the time it was really hard to come into med school, be really excited about it, and then sit my first exam and not do so well. That was a really big challenge for me and my mental health, and it really took some time for me to kind of come back from that. So that was a big challenge, and it made me realize how important it is to talk to people and to seek out help when you need it. The other thing about med school is that it is really hard, and I don't know if that is a silly thing to say because it's like, obviously med school's hard, right? But I kind of felt like everybody always says to you, oh, sitting the GAMSAT and getting into med school is the hardest part. Once you get in there, it's so much easier. And for me, I don't really know if that's true. It's challenging in a completely different way. Like the GAMSAT is really challenging because it's a really crap exam and you have to study while you're like living your life and you're working, and you also don't have any guarantee if you're going to get into med school at the end of it. So it's this real mental game. Whereas once you're in med school, there's a whole lot of challenges that come with it, managing like the volume of content, the speed at which they teach you. For me, coming back to uni after being away for 8 years was huge. Everything had changed. So many more things were online. There's so many different resources these days. So for me, kind of coming back into all of that was so much harder. And the other thing is that kind of comparing yourself to others thing was one of the biggest challenges as well. So I had never experienced before people kind of talking really openly about their marks and being quite so competitive about the marks and things that they were getting along the way. And that was really hard for me, particularly when I was seeing at the start of the year that I wasn't actually doing so well overall. And I really compared myself to others a lot, and I really felt like I was failing like a lot of the time. I felt completely inadequate, and I had a lot of imposter syndrome, you know, and those thoughts of like, oh, maybe they've picked the wrong person, should I really be here, that sort of thing. But as the year wore on, I started to be able to manage those thoughts better and started to really absolutely realize that of course I deserve to be in medical school because they wouldn't have picked me otherwise. And trying to just take strategies along the way so that you're kind of not engaging in those conversations and not around those sorts of people that are wanting to compare you. But yeah, I think comparing myself to others and that imposter syndrome has been one of the biggest challenges that I've faced throughout the year. Okay, so let's get into some of the questions. My first question is from Grace, who asked me, what were the 3 things that you wish you knew about med school before you started? It's such an interesting question. I hadn't really thought about it from this perspective. I think the first thing is just a bit of a blanket statement to be like, you're going to be the most fulfilled you've ever felt, but also the most challenged. Kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, it's been a year of very high highs and very low lows. So yeah, it's definitely going to be harder than you think. The other thing is that don't go too hard on yourself with studying. I really thought that studying was going to be easy, that I was going to just like hit the ground running and get straight back into it and be able to use the same techniques that I used in my undergrad degree. But that is absolutely not the case. There is so much information and so many different resources, and everybody tries to help you by telling you lots of different things, and it can get really confusing. So take your time with studying and don't go too hard on yourself when things aren't clicking early on. It's a process, and you'll get there with study. You just need to like be not too scared to try lots of different things. And the other thing is that there are so many great online resources, and you should definitely utilize them. It took me until the absolute last block of the year to get online and start using some of the great resources that are out there. And I really wish that I'd done that earlier, and that's definitely a strategy that I'm going to be using for next year. So yeah, or this year. Oh, it's 2020. So yeah, so I think definitely make most of those resources. The next one is, what are the age spans of people in your cohort, and are there any parents? So people that I've met in first year, there was people as young as 20, and then people as old as I think 35 or maybe a little bit older in their late 30s. I haven't asked every person I've met their exact age, so but there are people kind of up around that late 30s ish mark, and there are 2 people that I know who are parents with young children. So yeah, so it's definitely achievable. I don't think that age is a limit to this sort of thing, and you know, being 30, I don't feel old, I don't feel young, I feel like I'm just where I'm meant to be, so it's absolutely not a barrier. Stephen would like to know how long is the academic year, and aside from lectures, how many hours a day do you study in order to pass exams? So the academic year for us last year was from the end of January, I think we started in the last week, and we went right up to kind of halfway through November. That's going to be about the same for second year, and then in third year the years get even longer. So in third and fourth year we're pretty much there most of the time from January to December, with just like a little break either end of the year. So it is quite a lot of commitment, more than a normal kind of university degree. And then how many hours a week do I study? That really varies throughout the year and depending on the blocks and depending on what's coming up. At my university we're examined quite regularly, but we don't have really big exams that often, so we might have like 2 big exams throughout the year and then a bunch of little ones. So in a normal day I probably would go to uni between 6ish to 8 hours of the day, and then probably spend another 2 hours of the day studying on top of that. If you refer to my cardiology block video, that was kind of coming into my last 3 weeks before exams, and you'll note that there were days where I would kind of start at 8 in the morning and finish at like 9:30, 10 at night. So it can really vary depending on the time of year that you're at. I do give myself days off. That's really important. There are some days where I don't study at all, and you need that because otherwise you would actually go insane. Jessica asked, what have been the best and the worst parts of first year medicine? I'm not going to answer that question now because I think that I probably answered it previously, and what I was talking about is in my highs and my lows. So yeah, so probably that kind of will answer your question. And India asked me, do I have any regrets about being a slightly older medical student? No, not at all. I would much rather kind of have shuffled my life around and come to this course now than continue in a profession that I didn't feel fulfilled in. So absolutely no regrets at all. And I think that everything that I've done up until this point and all of the experiences that I've had have kind of made me into the person that I am and made me as resilient as I am and as ready to kind of tackle the challenges that medicine brings. So I think if anything, it's been better for me to be slightly older so that I'm more equipped to deal with what's kind of coming. They also asked me, do you have any ideas about what specialty you might be interested in? I have not really much of an idea. When I first came to med school at the start of the year, I was really set on the idea of like an ICU and emergency kind of critical care sort of job. I'm not sure now. I kind of like the idea that those are quite like, you have like a mixture of medical and procedure based stuff. I'm also kind of got my eyes around OBGYN. I'm like really interested in women's health and kind of reproduction and birth and babies and like women's health education and things like that. So that's probably what's in the most forefront of my mind right now. But I guess the thing about specialties and what I learned when I was doing physio as an undergrad and my career as a physio was that sometimes it takes a while to work these things out, and often it's the thing that you don't expect that becomes what you're interested in. I'm a really big believer in kind of feeling your way, and I think that when I find the specialty that's right for me, I'm going to feel like a real like internal gut feeling that that's right for me, and I'm probably not going to know that until I hit the wards in third and fourth year and do my clinical experiences. So at the moment, maybe critical care, maybe OBGYN, but I'm just going to leave that out there for the universe to decide, I think, at the moment. So we're on to the Instagram questions. I got so many questions on Instagram. I'm like so thrilled that so many of you actually want to hear my answers to these questions. It's great. So what are your must-have resources for medical school? Excellent question. It's really funny, when I first did my undergrad, it was all about textbooks. They do give you names of textbooks, and at my university, there are some lecturers that love specific textbooks and a lot of questions come from those. I haven't really used them that much, to be honest. I've used the lecture resources most of all, and I've used a lot of YouTube. My favorite channel is probably Armando Huzagarden. I've probably butchered that name. I'm gonna link it down below in the answer to this question. But Armando is amazing. Geeky Medics are amazing for OSCE stuff, and also Osmosis is just the absolute tits. It's just a great bundle of video resources where they give you about kind of 10-15 minute videos on different topics. And towards the end of the year, I really got into kind of trying to watch those videos related to the topic that I was about to go into the lecture for beforehand, and it made my life so much easier. I also loved online med ed for the big overview of like clinical picture stuff. I think that's probably going to become more relevant to me in the clinical years, but it was really helpful for our final end of year exams because there was a lot of clinically based questions too. So those are my best online resources that I love. And the other really good resource is people in the year above you. So for us at our school, the second year med school students, I can't even thank them enough for all of the resources that they made us. They made us so many practice questions. They held revision sessions for us, and that was really helpful because obviously each medical school examines students really differently, and so it was important for us to have perspectives from the medical school that we were at. So yeah, that second years, like, thank you so much. And also like your co-students as well. Everybody learns slightly different to you, so study individually, study as groups, talk to other people. Yeah, those are kind of my best study tips and best medical resources. What does a typical clinical day look like? It can really vary. We usually start the day off with like a clinical skills session at 8 AM, and so that will be things like blood pressure, you know, venipuncture, what else do we do? Ear and eye exams, throat exams, lymph node exams. So kind of, yeah, anything that was like a clinical procedural sort of thing. We did that. We also did a lot of radiology in those classes. So we're really lucky. We have really great advanced nursing practitioners that teach us in those sessions. And also we have registrars and consultants come as well, depending on what's going on. Those sessions are always based on what block we're in, so if it's hematology or respiratory or something like that. And then we'll have one communications session, and we'll have one physical examination session. So, and those, again, we have like a handbook where we're meant to kind of do different things each week. It really depends on your tutor and what they want. Some people keep you kind of in the clinical school and doing things like practicing on each other. And then a lot of people take us up to the wards, and we're really lucky we get to actually practice our examination skills now, taking histories on actual patients. So yeah, we spend probably most of those clinical days on the ward. We have a lot of downtime in between. So then we usually spend a lot of time in the common room playing ping pong and gossiping and drinking coffee, and we also spend a lot of time studying. So yeah, so it can be a really varied day, and I've had some really amazing days. I think some of my best days have been at my clinical school. Is it possible to actually have a life and friends and time for yourself in med school? Absolutely. I think that I have become quite insular in terms of all of my friends that I know are from med school, and it can be really hard because we'll hang out all day and then we'll catch up on the weekends, and then we talk a lot of shop. So I also really value the time that I spend with my housemates because they're kind of non-medical and we can talk about different things. There's absolutely time for that. There's time for exercising, there's time for sleeping in, there's time for working. I guess with any busy lifestyle, it's what you prioritize, and if you are prioritizing self-care and time with friends, then you can absolutely fit those things in. Do you feel like you will have difficulty specialising as a postgrad entry? Not at all. It hadn't really come to my mind. I don't think so. I don't think anything will be different postgrad versus undergrad. Is a nursing profession helpful if I want to get into med school in Australia? These sorts of questions about undergrad degrees and things, I can only really speak from my own personal experience. For me, having a clinical background has its pros and its cons. I think that I really excel in clinical days, and I'm really looking forward to our clinical years because I already have a lot of the clinical skills. Having said that, all of my clinical skills are physio based, and so for example, I've already known how to do a respiratory exam but from a physio perspective, and I had to relearn it from a medical perspective, and some things are the same and some things are different, and I find that sometimes I wish I was learning from a bit more of a blank slate because I things that I get wrong, it's usually because I have reverted back to my physio mindset, and medicine's asking me to do it slightly differently. So I think that having that clinical background definitely has pros and cons. But having said that, having a clinical background is great because I have a profession that I can use to earn money. So I'm not kind of stuck working in a cafe or something for a low hourly rate. I can actually earn a proper income if I want to by working outside. So yeah, I don't actually know any nurses. I don't think we have any in my cohort. I haven't met any, but yeah, it's pros and cons. Do whatever you enjoy so that you get a great GPA and that you enjoy the days that you get to spend there. How did you motivate yourself to keep studying with the GAMSAT? I don't know if it was much motivation. I think there were some days where I really didn't want to do it, and there were some days where I didn't study and I just watched YouTube and Netflix instead. I think that it's about keeping your end goal in mind, and if it's something that's really, really important to you, then you'll keep studying, even though sometimes it's not motivation, it's more determination. And I think just keeping in mind that everybody feels the same way. Like, nobody likes studying for the GAMSAT, nobody's having a good time doing it, and it's kind of that endurance factor of like, you've just got to keep pushing regardless. So I would say it's more stubbornness and pig-headedness than anything else, rather than motivation. How have I found med school coming from another clinical background? Well, I suppose I kind of answered that question before about the physio stuff, and yeah, it's been a blessing and kind of it's not a curse, but it's definitely had its disadvantages as well. So I'm learning to try and take my physio experience with a grain of salt, and making sure that I actually learn what our consultants are asking me to learn in terms of physical exams and history taking. But yeah, like for my OSCEs and things like that, it absolutely showed that I was a clinician. So, and that was, you know, the OSCEs for me were not as challenging because I'd already done things like that in the past. So that was an absolute benefit for sure. At what stage in becoming a doctor do you start getting paid? So you do, as a post-grad in Australia, you do your 4 years of medical school, and then once you graduate, you are then kind of have a restricted registration, I guess. And so you're an intern, and then in that 12 months you do start getting paid, and then after that intern year you get your full registration. But yeah, you get paid from being an intern. Oh, how did you find going paperless? Did you have any challenges, and will you stay with it? Yeah, I loved going paperless. I think it's the best decision I made. There's so many pros to going paperless, and I talked a lot about those in my going paperless in med school video, so I'll link that up above. But the biggest challenges I think at the start were getting used to seeing things on screens and not having like a big book that I could write things out, just looking at things on like a smaller iPad screen. But once I kind of got used to that, which only took me probably a month or two, I really enjoyed the kind of freedom that it gave me. So for example, I can write out notes that I want, or draw diagrams and things on my iPad, and then I can screenshot that and put that into my Anki deck, and then do image occlusion cards that way. And it's my own notes and my own mind maps, which helps me to learn better. So I think there's like gives me a lot of freedom using technology in that way, even though I'm not really that tech savvy. And it's lightweight. I don't have to carry books everywhere. I can just carry my iPad around, and yeah, I'm absolutely going to keep doing it. And I would really advocate, if you've got the resources to, you know, be able to have the laptop and the iPad and to go paperless, then I would absolutely advocate for it. It's great. What would end of first year med test tell the start of med school tests? It's going to be okay. No, I think it's going to be harder than you think, but it's also going to be so much more fulfilling than you're expecting as well. And yeah, I think don't be too hard on yourself, because I definitely held myself to some really high and unattainable standards this year, and I compared myself to others a lot. And so to just kind of relax and chill out and know that yeah, you're doing the best that you can, and that's enough, and to probably give yourself a bit more time off and to relax a little bit more, which I'll hopefully be able to do in this coming year. What will second year med be comprised of, and what am I excited about the most? Good question. So second year, we're going to start with neurology, and I think we do some endocrinology, we're doing gastro, and we're doing kind of sexual health stuff and nutrition. I think those are the main things we're doing. Oh, and we get to do oncology, which is exciting because just like hematology was in the hospital for first year, we're going to have oncology in the hospital for second year. So I love all of the time I get to spend in the hospital, so that'll be really great. I'm really excited about neurology. It's something that I really enjoyed as a physio student and working as a physio, and I'm interested to see more about how we treat a lot of neurological conditions from a medical perspective. I'm also really excited about reproductive health, and as I said earlier, I'm really interested in OBGYN, so I'm really interested to find out more about that. Ways to gain clinical experience to help decide between med or allied health degrees. So I think probably just approaching places, so hospitals or healthcare centres, and kind of letting them know your situation. So whether you're a uni student or a high school student and you're wanting to gain experience, I think if you just email or call and tell them where you're from and that you're hoping to gain some experience. From my perspective, I feel like if I was a physio and someone called and asked, I would absolutely have you come in and spend a few hours with me to see what was going on. So I think most places will be quite gracious with that. So yeah, so just approach and ask. I'm sure people will let you see what happens behind the scenes. Is the study load allowing me to work as well? Yeah, so I've touched on this quite a lot in some of my vlogs that I've done throughout the year. I started off the year working 8-hour shifts every week, and that was overwhelming for me, and that probably was too much. I found that it wasn't impacting on my time that I had to study, but it was impacting on my rest time. So I think I would work a full shift on the weekend, and then instead of having the other day to rest, I would have to study on that day, and then I got really tired and really burnt out. So for me, that's not achievable. I know people that work a lot more than that and people that work a lot less. You really just have to do what's best for you and what fits in with your lifestyle, and also what's achievable financially. I now work about once a fortnight, and I also do some kind of tutoring as well, which is good because I can schedule it in my own time, and I can take on more students if I'm like not got as much study on, or take on no students if I'm busy. So I kind of like a more flexible arrangement. It's definitely possible, but it kind of comes with its own challenges, I suppose. But how do you make your timetable / study time schedule, including time for yourself? I don't really schedule things. I'm the type of person that doesn't like adhering to a schedule. I also don't like adhering to a budget, like those sorts of things. So I usually just try to make sure that anytime I have any downtime at uni, like blocks between classes or blocks between clinical time when I'm at my clinical school, I always try to, do some Anki cards or do some notes or something like that. I tend to do most of my study on the weekends when I'm not studying for an exam. And then when I'm studying for an exam, it's like all bets are off. We just study all of the time. As any time that I have, I just study in it. So yeah, I don't keep a schedule. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's what works for me. Why did you decide to change from physio to med? Great question. I've already answered it. So I'm going to link a video up above to answer your question there that I already recorded. Was there a specific reason you decided to go to Sydney University instead of Melbourne University? Sydney University was the university that gave me an offer to study medicine. For Melbourne University, I would encourage you, if you're interested in understanding both courses, go and look at their websites. I'm not really the best person to give you information on both courses, but for my situation, Melbourne University had some specific prerequisites that my course had expired, because I'd done my course a few years earlier and the prerequisites were no longer relevant, and so I was going to have to kind of pay for and sit about 3 extra classes. And coming to med school, being an older student and already working full time, it wasn't really achievable for me to take time off to study to do those. And given that my GPA wasn't amazing, I didn't like my chances of getting into Melbourne Med School anyway. So I kind of decided to cut my losses and not apply and not sit the prerequisites. Sydney Uni doesn't have any prerequisites. So I could just apply there to most other med schools in Australia. So yeah, so that was probably the barrier there. And I think with med school, I'm really happy that I'm at Sydney. I think it's the best uni for me because of all of the clinical experience that we get from really early on. And I absolutely wouldn't have it any other way. What was the most unexpected thing about med school? Probably that I would find such great friends. I was really worried when I was moving to Sydney that I would not find any friends and that it was going to be a really stressful and lonely year. And I found the greatest friends, and I feel really lucky that I was able to find people that were really similar to me and kind of get my humor and don't get annoyed by me. So yeah, that was the biggest thing that I didn't expect, is to get such a great support network, I suppose. And also just, I don't know, I just really love the experience at Sydney Uni, and I'm sure that I thought that I would, but it's even better than I expected. Okay, do you think that sleep deprivation affects everyone in your cohort, and is it avoidable in medicine? That's a good question. I've definitely been sleep deprived throughout the year. Actually, I don't know if I've been sleep deprived. I've probably been more fatigued. I feel like definitely in the year that I've just had, I've had a lot of sleep because class often doesn't start until 9. So it's a lot more sleep than I was getting as a physio, because often work starts at 8. But I find that I get like mental fatigue. Like if I've had a lot of long study days in a row, then I get a lot of mental fatigue. Is it avoidable? I don't really think so. I suppose it's about being in tune with your body and making sure that you stop studying when you need to and that sort of thing. In terms of like sleep deprivation when you're in your clinical years and when you're working as a doctor, I can't really speak to that because I haven't been there yet. But I have to say it's something that I'm a little worried about, because you do hear a lot about doctors being sleep deprived, but I'll have to keep you posted on the answer to that one. Melbourne versus Sydney, especially in relation to studying medicine. In terms of the cities, Melbourne versus Sydney, I love living in both places. Melbourne probably still feels like home. I lived in Melbourne for like 6 years, I think, and so it still feels really homely for me. My sister lives in Melbourne, my family don't live far from Melbourne, so it feels like home, and I love the culture of the city, and yeah, I mean, I love Melbourne, and it's probably a city that I would choose to live in again. Sydney feels less like home, but it's starting to get more like that. I love where I live in Sydney. I love the vibe. I love, yeah, I love the university and the location. So to me, I actually think they're quite similar in terms of like lifestyle. Sydney's obviously more expensive, but Sydney does have the beaches, which is a pro. It really, to me, just depends on like whether you want to be closer to family, whether you want to uproot your whole lifestyle and move across the country. I'm just as happy in both places. Probably doesn't help you if you're trying to choose between the two, but I think they both have their pros and their cons. And yeah, I think it's more about the people that you meet in the places that make it homely, not necessarily the city itself. And I kind of talked about the university thing. I'm not in a position to kind of talk about the medical program at Melbourne, but I feel really privileged and lucky to be at the medical program at Sydney. I think that's all the questions. I hope that I was able to answer all of your questions adequately, and that they kind of helped you to, I don't know, work out any of the burning questions you were having about studying medicine or the GAMSAT. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for subscribing to my channel and to keep watching it. It really means a lot to me. When I started this channel a year ago, I really didn't expect that so many people would be keen to watch and to take part in this little journey with me. So I'm absolutely thrilled that you're all hanging around. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm also really keen to hear what sort of content you guys want for 2020 from me. I'm going to keep doing some week in the life videos. I'm also going to try some day in the life videos and some day in the life Instagram stories. So maybe comment below or send me an Instagram message about what sort of content you'd like to see from me this year. And yeah, I'm looking forward to looking into 2020 as a second year med student and showing you all the exciting times that are ahead. All right, I'm going to see you in the next video. Bye.